In today's episode, we're exploring 5 devastating exotic pet attacks that ended in tragedy. From a truck driver's deadly tiger barbecue to a logger's fatal bear attack. Let's begin with the first story where one man's need to impress his family cost him everything. It was July 4th, 2016, and the sprawling backyard of Randy Kowalski's modest ranch house in Zanesville, Ohio, buzzed with the excitement of the annual 4th of July family barbecue. Red, white, and blue decorations hung from the covered patio, while the smell of grilling burgers and hot dogs filled the warm summer air. 15 family members had gathered for the traditional celebration, including Randy's 2 teenage sons, his elderly parents, and several young cousins who ran around the yard with sparklers as the sun began to set over the rural property. At 43, Randy was a long-haul truck driver who had spent most of his adult life on the road, hauling freight across the Midwest to support his family after his divorce 3 years earlier. His love for exotic animals had started innocently enough with a few snakes and lizards, but had escalated dramatically when he purchased Saber, a 400-pound Bengal tiger, from a private breeder using money from a workers' compensation settlement. Randy had convinced himself that his bond with the massive cat made him special, often bragging to neighbors and co-workers about his unique pet that lived in the reinforced enclosure he had built behind his garage. Randy had been keeping the tiger illegally for 18 months, operating under constant threat of discovery by local authorities who had dramatically increased exotic animal enforcement following Ohio's 2011 Zanesville incident. Multiple neighbor complaints had already triggered 2 investigations, but Randy had managed to temporarily relocate Saber during inspections. Bengal tigers are among the world's most powerful predators, with adult males weighing up to 500 pounds and possessing the strength to kill prey much larger than themselves. These magnificent cats are solitary, territorial animals with razor-sharp claws that can grow up to 4 inches long and jaws capable of delivering a bite force exceeding 1,000 pounds per square inch. Despite being raised in captivity, tigers retain all their wild instincts and can become extremely aggressive when stressed, threatened, or exposed to loud noises and unfamiliar situations. Randy had been drinking beer steadily throughout the afternoon, his judgment increasingly impaired as he entertained his visiting brother-in-law with stories of his adventures with Saber. The distant sound of fireworks from neighboring properties had been making the tiger increasingly agitated, his pacing more intense, and his vocalizations more frequent as the evening progressed. Randy's family members had noticed Saber's restless behavior, but Randy dismissed their concerns with the overconfidence that alcohol and familiarity had bred over the years. As the barbecue wound down and darkness began to fall, Randy's brother-in-law expressed skepticism about Randy's claims of having a special relationship with the dangerous predator. The challenge to his credibility, combined with his intoxicated state, prompted Randy to announce that he would demonstrate his bond with Saber by entering the enclosure and interacting with the tiger directly. The attack came without warning as Randy stumbled deeper into the enclosure, his unsteady gait and strong scent of alcohol triggering Saber's predatory instincts. The massive tiger launched himself at Randy with explosive power, his 400-pound frame covering the distance between them in a single bound. Randy had no time to react as Saber's massive paws struck his chest, driving him backward onto the concrete floor with bone-crushing force. Saber's razor-sharp claws raked across Randy's torso, each swipe opening deep gashes that severed muscles and arteries while his powerful jaws clamped down on Randy's neck and throat. The tiger's 4-inch canine teeth punctured through vital structures in Randy's neck as his body convulsed under the tremendous pressure. Blood poured from the massive neck wounds as Saber maintained his crushing grip, the tiger's powerful jaw muscles compressing Randy's windpipe and severing major arteries with devastating efficiency. The horrified family members screamed and threw barbecue tools and lawn chairs at the enclosure, but their desperate attempts to distract Saber only seemed to intensify his aggressive behavior. Randy's teenage sons recorded the attack on their phones before the shock overwhelmed them, their footage later becoming crucial evidence in the investigation. Police officers arrived within 15 minutes of the first 911 call, but Saber remained aggressive and protective of his kill, forcing them to shoot the tiger multiple times before they could safely enter the enclosure. Randy was pronounced dead at the scene, his massive injuries making any medical intervention impossible. The traumatic incident left his entire extended family requiring psychological counseling, with several relatives developing lasting PTSD from witnessing the brutal attack. The investigation revealed that Randy had been keeping Saber illegally, violating multiple state and local ordinances regarding exotic animal ownership that had been significantly strengthened following the 2011 Zanesville exotic animal tragedy. The incident prompted Ohio legislators to further enhance exotic animal laws and increase penalties for illegal ownership of dangerous predators. But tigers weren't the only exotic pets that could turn deadly when their wild instincts overrode years of human contact. In Connecticut, a retired nurse's routine evening would become a nightmare when her beloved chimpanzee's territorial instincts finally overwhelmed years of domestication. It was March 18, 2014, and the elegant dining room of Robert and Linda Harrison's colonial home in Stamford, Connecticut, was set for an intimate dinner party with Robert's co-workers from the insurance company, where he worked as a senior adjuster. The mahogany table gleamed under the crystal chandelier, while Linda made final preparations for the evening, unaware that Bruno, the 140-pound chimpanzee who had been part of their family for 8 years, was growing increasingly agitated in his basement enclosure as unfamiliar voices filled the house above. At 52, Linda was a recently retired registered nurse who had dedicated her career to caring for others. First her patients, and then Bruno, whom she treated like the child she had never had. She dressed the chimpanzee in human clothes and included him in family activities, despite Robert's growing concerns about Bruno's increasing size and strength. Linda refused to acknowledge that Bruno had become unpredictable and potentially dangerous as he reached full maturity, dismissing his occasional aggressive displays as normal behavior for an intelligent animal. The Harrison home had been extensively modified to meet Connecticut's post-2009 primate regulations, with reinforced enclosures, double lock systems, and secure barriers separating Bruno's living area from the main house. However, Linda had grown increasingly lax about following the strict containment protocols, often allowing Bruno into the main house when she believed no one would discover the violations. Chimpanzees are among the strongest primates on Earth, with adult males possessing the strength of 5 grown men and the ability to inflict devastating injuries with their powerful hands and sharp teeth. Despite their intelligence and capacity for learning human behaviors, chimpanzees remain wild animals with unpredictable temperaments and strong territorial instincts. Adult chimps can become extremely aggressive when they feel threatened or when their social hierarchy is challenged, their attacks often targeting the face, hands, and genitals of their victims with surgical precision. The dinner party had been proceeding normally in the main house, with 6 guests enjoying Linda's carefully prepared meal, while Bruno remained hidden in the basement recreation room. However, the presence of strangers in his territory, combined with the sounds of animated conversation filtering down from above, began to stress Bruno beyond his tolerance level. As the evening progressed and wine flowed freely, the dinner conversation became more boisterous, with several guests laughing loudly and gesturing animatedly. The noise carried throughout the house, reaching Bruno in the basement, where his agitation grew with each burst of unfamiliar laughter. Linda had been checking on Bruno periodically throughout the evening, but during her final visit, she found him pacing frantically and displaying clear signs of territorial aggression. The sounds of strangers in his domain had triggered his protective instincts, and his stress levels had reached a dangerous peak that Linda failed to recognize. Instead of immediately securing Bruno in his regulation enclosure or calling for help, Linda made the fatal decision to try calming him with physical contact. She approached the agitated chimpanzee and wrapped her arms around him in what she believed was a soothing embrace, her maternal instincts overriding the obvious danger signals that Bruno was broadcasting. The attack was swift and brutal, driven by instincts that 8 years of human contact had never eliminated. Bruno's powerful hands, each capable of crushing bones, gripped Linda's head and shoulders while his teeth tore into her face, opening severe lacerations across her cheeks, forehead, and around her eyes. The 140-pound chimpanzee's strength was overwhelming, and Linda had no chance to defend herself against an animal that possessed 5 times her physical power. Her screams echoed through the basement and up into the main house, alerting the dinner guests that something terrible was happening below. Bruno's methodical attack continued, his teeth creating multiple deep lacerations across Linda's face and scalp, while his powerful hands struck her head and torso repeatedly. Bruno's hands tore at Linda's face and neck, his powerful fingers severing major blood vessels and causing massive hemorrhaging. When officers finally entered the home, they found Bruno still in the basement with Linda's body, his aggressive posture making any rescue attempt impossible. The chimpanzee was shot multiple times after refusing to retreat, his death adding to the tragedy that had destroyed what should have been a pleasant social evening. Linda was pronounced dead at the scene, having succumbed to severe trauma and blood loss from her extensive injuries. The incident shocked Connecticut's exotic animal community and revealed the ongoing violations of primate ownership regulations that had been implemented following the state's 2009 chimpanzee attack. The 6 dinner guests required extensive psychological counseling to cope with the trauma of witnessing Linda's brutal death, while Robert faced both criminal charges for violating exotic animal laws. Yet primates weren't the only exotic pets that could turn deadly when their predatory instincts overrode human familiarity. In Florida, a construction contractor's birthday celebration would become a nightmare when his pet alligator's feeding instincts were triggered by an accidental fall. It was August 12, 2017, and the backyard of Miguel Rodriguez's sprawling ranch house in Homestead, Florida, was alive with the sounds of his 38th birthday celebration. 20 friends and family members had gathered around the custom-built swimming pool and the separate concrete enclosure that housed the party's most unusual attraction. Crusher, a 9-foot American alligator that Miguel had been keeping illegally for 5 years. The massive reptile rested in his own dedicated habitat, where guests could observe the apex predator from what they believed was a safe distance. Miguel had built his construction business from nothing, his success allowing him to indulge in increasingly exotic hobbies that included a collection of dangerous reptiles housed throughout his property. The alligator had started as a baby, purchased from a black market dealer who assured Miguel that the reptile would remain manageable if raised from infancy. 5 years later, Crusher had grown into a 200-pound apex predator whose presence at pool parties had become Miguel's signature entertainment, though several guests had stopped attending his gatherings due to safety concerns. The custom alligator enclosure featured reinforced concrete walls and a separate filtration system, designed to keep Crusher contained while allowing party guests to observe him safely. Miguel regularly hand-fed the alligator whole chickens during parties. American alligators are apex predators that have remained virtually unchanged for over 200 million years, perfectly adapted for their role as ambush hunters in aquatic environments. Adult males can reach lengths of 14 feet and weights exceeding 1,000 pounds, with jaw muscles capable of exerting over 3,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. Their bite force is among the strongest in the animal kingdom, capable of crushing turtle shells and breaking the bones of large mammals, while their signature death roll can disorient and drown prey much larger than themselves. The birthday party had been in full swing for several hours, with Miguel consuming numerous beers and shots of tequila, while entertaining his guests with stories about his various exotic pets. As the evening progressed, Miguel's intoxication led him to become increasingly reckless around Crusher's enclosure, leaning further over the walls and making jokes about the alligator's docile behavior. The tragedy began when Miguel decided to retrieve a beach ball that had blown into the area near Crusher's enclosure during a game of pool volleyball. The ball had landed on the narrow concrete ledge that surrounded the alligator's habitat, just inches from the water's edge where Crusher floated motionlessly. Miguel climbed onto the 18-inch wide concrete barrier, his alcohol-impaired balance making the simple task dangerous as he reached for the colorful ball. As Miguel stretched toward the beach ball, his unsteady footing caused him to lose his balance and tumble directly into Crusher's enclosure. The moment Miguel's body hit the water near the massive reptile, Crusher's predatory instincts took over completely, his brain registering the splashing and proximity as a feeding opportunity rather than recognizing his familiar caretaker. The alligator had been in a semi-dormant state, but the sudden disturbance triggered his lightning-fast reflexes. Crusher's massive jaws snapped shut on Miguel's torso with bone-crushing force, his 3,000 pounds of bite pressure instantly fracturing ribs and puncturing vital organs. The alligator immediately began his signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining his grip on Miguel's body. The violent rotation dislocated Miguel's shoulder and pulled him deeper underwater, where Crusher's natural advantages became overwhelming as his victim's lungs filled with water. The 20 party guests screamed in horror as they watched Miguel being dragged underwater by the massive alligator, the enclosure water turning red with blood as Crusher's death roll continued with mechanical precision. Several guests threw pool equipment and patio furniture at the alligator, but their desperate attempts to distract the reptile only seemed to intensify his aggressive behavior. Local sheriff's deputies arrived within 12 minutes of the first 911 call, but Crusher remained aggressive and protective of his kill, circling the enclosure with Miguel's lifeless body, while displaying territorial behavior that made any immediate intervention extremely dangerous. Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission officers arrived 25 minutes after the initial emergency call, but Crusher's continued aggression forced wildlife officers to shoot the massive alligator multiple times before they could safely recover Miguel's body. Miguel was pulled from the blood-stained water but was pronounced dead at the scene, his massive injuries making any resuscitation attempts futile. The investigation revealed that Miguel had been keeping Crusher illegally for years, violating multiple state and federal regulations regarding alligator ownership and residential exotic animal enclosures. But aquatic predators weren't the only exotic pets that could turn deadly when wild instincts overrode human familiarity. In Montana, a real estate agent's professional duty would put her face to face with a mountain lion during what should have been a routine property inspection. It was October 7th, 2015, and the remote mountain property outside Kalispell, Montana, offered breathtaking views of the Flathead Valley as real estate agent. Jennifer Martinez led her clients through the unique listing that had been on the market for over a year. The 46-year-old agent had built her reputation on selling challenging properties that other agents avoided, her persistence and creativity helping clients find value in unusual situations. This particular property came with an extraordinary complication that had both intrigued and deterred potential buyers. A large outdoor enclosure housing Dakota, a 120-pound mountain lion that the previous owner had been keeping illegally and would need to be relocated before any sale could be completed. Jennifer had been working in real estate for 15 years, specializing in rural and recreational properties that appealed to buyers seeking privacy and unique amenities. Her clients were a young professional couple from Seattle looking for a weekend retreat, accompanied by their attorney, who was reviewing the complex legal issues surrounding the property transfer. The seller had assured Jennifer that Dakota was completely docile and could be approached safely, describing the mountain lion as being as gentle as a house cat, despite his impressive size. The property featured a sprawling log home on 40 acres of pristine wilderness, with the mountain lion enclosure located behind the main house, in a clearing surrounded by towering pine trees. Dakota had been living on the property for 8 years, raised from a kitten after being orphaned in the wild, and hand-fed by humans throughout his development. However, Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks had recently discovered the illegal captive wildlife situation and issued orders for Dakota's immediate removal to a licensed sanctuary. Mountain lions, also known as cougars or pumas, are powerful predators capable of taking down prey much larger than themselves, with adult males weighing up to 200 pounds and possessing incredible strength and agility. These solitary cats are ambush hunters with razor-sharp claws and powerful jaws designed for delivering fatal bites to the neck and spine of their victims. Even when raised in captivity from birth, mountain lions retain all their natural hunting instincts and can become extremely dangerous when they perceive humans as potential prey or threats to their territory. Jennifer had researched the property extensively and spoken with the seller multiple times about Dakota's temperament and the legal complications surrounding his presence. The property tour had been proceeding normally, with Jennifer explaining the various features and legal requirements to her clients while they observed Dakota from outside his enclosure. However, during the inspection of the enclosure's structural integrity, Jennifer noticed that one of the gate latches appeared to be malfunctioning, potentially creating a safety hazard that could affect the property's insurability. As a licensed real estate professional, she felt obligated to document the condition properly for her clients and their attorney. Eager to provide thorough documentation for her clients and demonstrate her professional diligence, Jennifer made the fatal decision to enter the service corridor that ran between the outer fence and the mountain lion's main enclosure to examine the faulty latch mechanism more closely. She unlocked the service corridor gate and stepped inside the narrow walkway, calling Dakota's name in what she hoped was a soothing tone, while her 3 clients watched nervously from the safety of the outer fence line. As Jennifer examined the malfunctioning latch, the mechanism suddenly failed completely under her inspection, causing the enclosure gate to swing open and providing Dakota direct access to the service corridor where she stood trapped. The mountain lion immediately focused his attention on the intruder now within his reach, his amber eyes tracking Jennifer's movements, while his powerful muscles tensed with predatory alertness. Dakota's ears flattened against his head, and his tail began twitching, clear warning signs that Jennifer's inexperience with big cats prevented her from recognizing. The attack came with explosive speed as Dakota launched himself through the open gate at Jennifer, his 120-pound frame covering the distance in a single bound that gave her no time to react or retreat. The mountain lion's powerful paws struck Jennifer's chest and shoulders, driving her backward against the corridor fence while his razor-sharp claws raked across her torso and arms. Dakota's jaws clamped down on Jennifer's neck with devastating precision, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through vital structures and causing severe neck trauma. Jennifer's body convulsed under the mountain lion's weight as Dakota's natural hunting instincts took over completely. His predatory behavior focused on delivering the killing bite that would end his victim's struggles. The massive blood loss from severed arteries in her neck caused rapid loss of consciousness as Dakota maintained his grip. Sheriff's deputies arrived within 20 minutes of the emergency call, but Dakota's continued aggression made any rescue attempt impossible. The mountain lion was shot multiple times after refusing to retreat from Jennifer's body, his death adding to the tragedy that had begun as a routine property showing. Jennifer was pronounced dead at the scene, her massive neck injuries and blood loss making any medical intervention futile even if help had arrived immediately. The incident shocked Montana's real estate community and led to new protocols requiring specialized training for agents handling properties with illegal wildlife situations. Jennifer's death prompted legislative discussions about liability issues surrounding property transfers involving illegally kept dangerous animals. But even animals raised from infancy could prove deadly when their wild nature finally overcame years of human contact. In Montana, a retired logger's daily routine would become his final encounter when his beloved bear's territorial instincts suddenly awakened. It was May 22, 2013, and the backyard of Tom Bradley's rustic log home in Missoula, Montana, was decorated with balloons and streamers for his grandson's high school graduation party. 12 family members had gathered to celebrate the milestone, including Tom's elderly parents, his adult children, and several young grandchildren who played on the wooden swing set he had built years earlier. Hidden deep in the forested section of his 40-acre property was the large enclosure where Buster, a 300-pound black bear, had lived for the past 3 years after Tom illegally rescued him as an orphaned cub from the wilderness surrounding their mountain home. At 55, Tom was a recently retired logger who had spent his career working in Montana's vast forests, his deep connection to wildlife leading him to take in the orphaned bear cub, despite knowing he lacked the required wildlife rehabilitation permits and proper documentation for legal possession. Tom's wife had initially opposed keeping Buster, but her husband's gentle nature with animals and his success in raising the cub had gradually won her over. The bear had become a beloved family member, with Tom's grandchildren growing up watching their grandfather interact safely with one of nature's most powerful predators. Though the family understood the need for absolute secrecy about Buster's existence, Tom had built an elaborate habitat for Buster in a remote section of his property, carefully concealed from neighboring homes and main roads to avoid detection by Montana fish, wildlife, and parks officials. Black bears are North America's most common bear species, with adult males weighing between 300 and 400 pounds and possessing incredible strength capable of breaking down doors and overturning cars. Despite their name, black bears can be brown, cinnamon, or even blonde in color, and they are omnivores with powerful jaws and razor-sharp claws designed for digging and climbing. Black bears can become extremely dangerous when defending food sources or feeling threatened, their speed and agility making escape nearly impossible once an attack begins. The graduation party had been proceeding smoothly, with family members enjoying Tom's famous barbecue while sharing stories and celebrating his grandson's academic achievements. However, Tom had been following his usual routine of feeding Buster during the early evening hours, a schedule he had maintained religiously for 3 years. Despite the ongoing celebration, Tom felt compelled to maintain Buster's feeding routine, believing that any disruption might stress the bear or draw unwanted attention if Buster became agitated. As Tom made his way to Buster's hidden enclosure, carrying the bear's evening meal of fish and berries, he noticed that Buster seemed more agitated than usual, pacing restlessly near the fence line and vocalizing more frequently. The sounds of the graduation party, combined with the presence of so many unfamiliar people on the property, had clearly stressed the bear beyond his normal tolerance levels. Tom entered Buster's enclosure carrying the plate of food, his familiar presence initially seeming to calm the agitated bear who had been pacing near the fence line. However, Buster's behavior had been changing over the past several months as he reached full maturity, his natural instincts becoming stronger and his tolerance for human presence decreasing. The combination of territorial stress from the nearby celebration and his evolving wild nature had pushed Buster beyond his comfort zone. As Tom approached with the food, Buster's demeanor suddenly shifted from cautious interest to aggressive dominance, his natural instincts overriding 3 years of human conditioning. The 300-pound bear charged Tom with explosive speed, his powerful frame covering the distance between them in seconds, while his massive paws struck Tom's chest with bone-crushing force. Tom dropped the plate of food as Buster's claws raked across his torso, opening deep gashes that severed muscles and arteries while his powerful jaws delivered devastating bites to Tom's head and shoulders. Buster's powerful jaws delivered deep bites to Tom's neck and head, while his claws continued to rake across his victim's body, tearing flesh and opening massive wounds that caused catastrophic bleeding. The bear's powerful swiping motions with his claws created devastating lacerations across Tom's torso and limbs. Tom's movements ceased within the first few minutes of the attack, as massive blood loss overwhelmed his system. Emergency responders arrived within 15 minutes of the first 911 call, but Buster's continued aggression made any rescue attempt impossible. The bear was shot multiple times after refusing to retreat from Tom's body, his death devastating Tom's wife, who had considered Buster part of their family for 3 years. Tom was pronounced dead at the scene, his massive injuries from deep bites, tearing, and catastrophic bleeding making any medical intervention impossible, even if help had arrived immediately. The incident shocked Montana's wildlife community and prompted discussions about the ethics and safety of illegally keeping wild animals, regardless of how young they were when acquired. Tom's death led to stricter enforcement of wildlife regulations and served as a tragic reminder that wild animals can never be fully domesticated, no matter how much love and care they receive from human caretakers. Thanks for watching. Click the next video for the next stories that will show you why some creatures should never be kept as pets.